All right, Asia Extreme sent in 2 questions. Between the Rise and Fall DVDs, which one do you think is the better of the two, WCW or ECW? How long do you predict till we see a rise and fall of WWE or TNA DVD? Well, the answer to the second question, we'll never see a rise and fall of WWE DVD. I don't think. Not in my lifetime. I don't think we'll ever see one. Not from a rival wrestling company anyway. I mean, I know WWE's going down as far as like, numbers go, but I don't see them dying anytime soon. And TNA, I don't know. Everybody keeps thinking they're gonna die. Like, that's the big joke. Everybody thinks there's gonna be a rise and fall of TNA DVD released by WWE, and they keep saying it, but it hasn't happened yet. They're still around, so I really don't know. TNA, you can never tell how long they're gonna survive. But yeah, I wouldn't count on having any one of those two DVDs anytime soon. As for the first question about which was better, the WCW or the ECW DVD, the ECW DVD was, because it was, even though it had some of that WWE revisionist history in it, it wasn't as bad because ECW wasn't really a big contender to them, so they didn't feel the need to talk bad about them and bury them or whatever. So that one was just really good and really exciting, and it was fine. The WCW one, which I refused to pay money for because I knew it was going to be a hatchet job, and it was, from what I heard, I knew what it was going to be. It was going to be them kind of poking fun at WCW and saying all the things that they did wrong and yada, 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 and all the things I've heard a million times. And, saying dumb things like Mike Graham saying Jeff Jarrett's not a draw, so that's why it didn't work. That's why they died, basically. That was one of the reasons. And I'm like, look, you cannot blame... And this is what I hate. It's like in '96 when they said, oh, Shawn Michaels not a draw. Look at the numbers. WCW's kicking their asses. And I'm like, look, you can't blame the champion for the bad creative direction of the company. He's just the guy that's stuck in a bad creative direction. What happened in WCW 2000 was certainly not Jeff Jarrett's fault. It was a train wreck before he even got there. And, yeah, that's kind of, so Mike Graham can, kiss my ass. It's just, and then he also said something like, I'm so glad that it went out of business because now it's in the hands of Vince McMahon, a wrestling guy. I'm like, yes, I'm glad that wrestling, because I think that the worst thing that ever happened to wrestling was losing ECW and WCW, because it just caused so many problems that we're seeing today. And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally glad that all those people lost their jobs, and I'm totally glad that the WWE was put into a situation where they could feel like they could be complacent and not try anymore, and not try as hard as they could, And like, yeah, so, yeah, fuck you, buddy. And yeah, I'm sure there were other stupid things that were said. Like, I heard, although I'm sure if they did it now, they'd probably change it, but I heard Hogan got none of the blame. I heard, certain guys, they just tried to pin it on certain guys. And it was like Jarrett, Russo. I don't fully blame Russo because it was, like I said, it was kind of a sinking ship before he got there. I mean, WCW 99 was awful, and that had nothing to do with Russo. Somebody the other day, I was on a message board, and somebody blamed Vince Russo for the finger poke of doom. And I'm like, dude, he was still with the WWF at that point. I mean, he had nothing to do with that. So, I mean, there's a lot of stupid shit that, happened before Russo got there. And, I didn't buy the WCW DVD because I knew what it was going to be. And from what I've been told, I was right. So, I'm just going to say that the ECW one was better. Alright, and he sent in a second question. Do you think the Wrestling Observer newsletter should create their own top 100 or 50 greatest pro wrestlers list, like how AFI does the 100 years of top 100 stars list? Sure, why not? I'd like to see it, because, again, I feel like the WWE, when they do theirs, it's going to have somewhat of a bias towards it. And I'd like to see, I think the Wrestling Observer would do a better job of having some kind of standard for establishing these people and why they're in the spots that they're in. I just think they would do a better job of it. And if you had a chance to do it, who would you choose as your top 10 greatest? He lists his, Asia Extreme, as starting from 1 to 10, Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Bret Hart, Stone Cold, The Rock, Roddy Piper, Macho Man, HBK, and Misawa. It's tough. For my top 10, it's very hard, because there are so many factors you gotta look into, like, how big of a star were they, how important they were to the business, how good of a worker they were, how charismatic they were, yada, yada, yada. So many things. I mean, Hulk Hogan's one of the biggest stars in the history of the business, but is he really one of the best workers? Probably not. I don't know. But my top 10 would probably include guys like Brett, Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage, The Rock. Rock is probably the greatest star that wrestling ever produced. And the only thing that keeps him from being like the unquestionable greatest of all time is the fact that he just didn't have that long of a run. He was not around that long. But you had a guy that literally could do it all. He could sing, dance, tell jokes, be serious. He was a great athlete. He knew how to work. He was a guy that could literally do everything and make you care about everything he was doing. And I don't think I've seen another talent that has quite the combined, who's like truly a total package, quite like The Rock. So Rock would probably be my number one. But, I mean, there's so many other factors that go into it. I don't know if I can list a top 10 now. I will say this, Ric Flair would not be on my top 10. I've never bought into the Ric Flair is God mystique. I never, even as a kid, I just never really saw what the big deal was. I don't know, I just always thought guys, as far as him being the greatest worker goes, I kind of thought Brett was better. I thought Shawn was better. I thought Randy Savage was better. I thought Ricky Steamboat was better. And other things. As far as him being the best talker, I was like, well, I kind of like Jake Roberts and Mick Foley and Chris Jericho and The Rock and some of these guys. So there are so many aspects that people say Ric Flair is the best at, and I think it's highly debatable that he's the best at those certain things. So, if you think he's the greatest of all time, that's fine, but I don't like being told that he's, quote-unquote, unquestionably the greatest of all time, because I definitely think it's open to debate. Everybody's opinions are different. So, Ric Flair would not be in my top 10, basically, but... his top 10 isn't bad. Guys like Andre and Piper, I can definitely see why they'd be on his list. So, yeah. All right, Mr. Narrator. How would you have written the NXT shows to make them more entertaining / effective? Well, the major problem with NXT, and I noticed it when they started doing it, because when it first started, I thought it was really good, and I thought it was the best show that was being produced at the time. But the problem with it were and everybody says it, were the stupid competitions. And the reason they were dumb was because they had nothing to do with becoming a better wrestler. I remember one show they did where they were carrying around a beer keg around the ring and having a race. And I'm sitting there thinking, how does that make you a better wrestler? I don't understand how that... Skip Sheffield is going to have an advantage there because he's an ox, but he's still a shitty worker. How does that make him a better wrestler? How do they do, when they do segments where they're dissing each other on the mic and they have 30 seconds to diss each other, how does that make them a better wrestler? How does that make them more legitimate to win the competition? I understand that wrestling has an entertainment aspect to it, but in real sports, T.O., he trash talks or whatever. He doesn't have a 30-second diss contest with somebody. He just naturally is a trash talking son of a bitch. And there are a lot of other guys like that. And... so things like that are just stupid. It's like, look, either they have the personality or they don't. It's like having like a battle rap without the rap. To me, is just kind of stupid. And on the Divas season 3 show, they had a wheelbarrow race with Hornswoggle in the wheelbarrow. And how does that make you a better wrestler? I don't understand that. In the Ultimate Fighter, which this is kind of like WWE's equivalent to that, or attempt to mimic that, I guess. They had the fighters participate in matches and fights. And they fight each other. The winners advance, and the losers get eliminated. Doy, it's that simple. Just have them wrestle. And that's how you earn your way through the competition. Just wrestle, and whoever wins the most matches or whatever, or things like that, they're the ones who advance. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science. And then they did things like... when the winners were decided, like, okay, Wade Barrett won, but all of them ended up coming back for the Nexus thing, obviously, but it kind of makes the competition not mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if one guy wins, yet they all get contracts, it kind of feels like, well, what was the point of the whole competition? Then you have season 2, Caval wins, yet Alex Riley's on Raw. Michael McGillicuddy and Husky Harris, they wind up on Raw, and they're in bigger positions than Caval is in, even though Caval won. And I know the winners were promised title shots, but neither one won their title shots. So again, it's just the whole competition felt pointless, in my opinion. I'm not saying that the losers can never be on WWE television, but at least hold off a while. Make it seem like the winner really did earn a spot on the roster, and there were consequences for not winning the competition. You know, but that's just my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels. Okay, Mogrim 687. Do you think an off season could work for pro wrestling? That's a very good question. I've thought about that myself. In fact, Bill and Doug mentioned it on their video. I don't know. Like, I really don't know if it would work for wrestling. I think it's something that's worth trying, though. I think it would help out with injuries. At the very least, try and work out people's schedules to where they can get, like, a 2-month period off or something. You know, maybe a 3-month period off for each individual talent, and they'll just take their time off or something. I think that'll help reduce injuries and make the characters even fresher. And maybe an off-season would help with that. I don't know. Again, it's the type of thing that I don't know if it would work until somebody actually did it. And it would be pretty ballsy to try something like that. So, yeah, it's an interesting idea, and it's something that I've thought about whether or not it would work, but I'm not sure. I'd have to be in the wrestling business and would actually have to do it myself to know for sure if it would work. All right, and Dux Florence. Where do you think TNA will be in 2 years ratings-wise, the wrestlers they're focused on in the main events, and their pay-per-view buy rates? Well, if their history indicates anything, they'll be even lower than they are in 2 years. Everybody keeps thinking that they're gonna grow, and they never seem to get above that 1.1 to 1.3 range. And until something major happens, where they hit a creative high and start booking excellent shows, and fans start coming back to the show in droves, I just don't see that changing anytime soon. Same goes for their buy rates. I think they would benefit from reducing their pay-per-view numbers. I think WWE would as well, but. As for who they'll be focusing on in the main event, I would hope guys like Mr. Anderson, guys like the Pope, guys like AJ, hopefully guys like Sting and Kevin Nash and the like just aren't even on the show. Well, let's be honest. I want Hogan gone. I want Flair gone. I want Sting gone. Nash, all of them. I want them all gone. And I would hope that would change.